conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of her advocacy unlocks sales and strategic compliance via frameworks and certifications. And of course, the co-founder of ATOS, none other than Miss Shayne Adler.
Hi, Daniel.
Welcome, Miss Shane, once again to my other podcast. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I know?
Absolutely. I'm Shane. I'm, like Daniel said, co founder and CEO of Atos. And we serve startups and SMBs to help them speed up their revenue cycles and close deals and gain investment via strategic compliance in data privacy, AI governance, and cybersecurity.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Shane. Thank you. And today let's talk about strategic compliance, turning regulations into revenue. The core shift is the strategic compliance implies a mindset change from being a regulations as a cost center to a value creator. What is the pivotal moment or insight that convinced you to this was not just possible but necessary for modern business?
Well, the number of regulations out there is exploding. The landscape is changing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. It's happening so fast because technology is evolving so quickly. But what convinced us to launch Atos was actually two separate events. One was my co founder wrote his dissertation and did research on how startups were coping with data privacy regulations and all of the changes that were coming out, and found that because there wasn't a good option out there, they weren't doing anything. And it was literally costing them deals. And then on the other hand, what we saw, not one of our clients on the acquisition side of an M&A deal, was a company that the founders just simply didn't know what they didn't know. They built a product using AI, and the data 6 years prior that they had built this product on hadn't been managed in a way that complied with data privacy requirements. And so in this M&A deal, they ended up having a consequence that's called algorithmic disgorgement, which is a mouthful, but it's a penalty that's gaining traction. What it means in brief is that they had to delete everything that they had built on this data that hadn't been handled compliantly, and it devalued their company by 96%. It dropped from a low eight figures deal to a mid six figures deal, and completely devastating. It was completely devastating. So what we analyzed when we were thinking about launching Atos was the fact that there are all of these clients for B2B customers that want to see certain compliance in place. And if you don't have it, you either lose the deal or it stalls it. It can be a real source of friction. And then for for B2C companies,
Mhm.
they can't get through to investors. Investors want to see that you have these things in place. But the traditional methods of earning certifications or getting expert guidance, they were just cost prohibitive. It was either consulting a law firm every time you had a question, burning tons of hours to become an expert yourself and choking up your own bandwidth to do your core business, or hiring someone to do it full time, which really isn't necessary for most startups in the early stages and is very expensive. Somebody in this field, it could be like starting salary of around a quarter million US.
Okay, quarter a million. I like the salary machine.
Right.
I like that
That's a heavy
salary.
price tag for a startup.
Yes. Why not? Beyond avoidance, most companies aim for compliance to avoid fines and reputational damage. How do you define the positive, proactive goal of a strategic compliance function?
The proactive approach is if you set everything up and you build out your trust center, you have your documentation, you have all of your answers ready, and everyone in the company is in sync and aware of the procedures. You don't have these points of friction that I described, like delayed deal closings, all these scrambles that can pop up. It can take anywhere for like a very simple diligence questionnaire for a B2B company, anywhere from 16 hours of full-time employee time to, I think I saw one source where it took as much as 30 business days, full business days, like 8-hour blocks worth of employee time to uh, respond to these diligence questionnaires that pop up. And it but if you have these things in place, then you look like you are as trustworthy as the established brands. You can demonstrate that you have all of these things prepared and ready to go, and just send it out, speed it along. You don't have to have that scramble. You don't have to have that delay, and you get to revenue faster with that proactive approach.
First mover advantage, Ms. Shane. Can you share an example where a company used an impending regulation not as a threat but as a runaway to launch a new product or service that captured market share ahead of the competitors?
I think more of what we see tend to be startups that are launching into blue ocean rather than trying to get ahead of regulations. It's so hard to anticipate um, how regulations are going to play out. So what we do is we take a privacy principles by design approach. People familiar with the topic may know privacy by design as a theme where you build data privacy into the foundation of your product or your business so that it becomes second nature. But trying to stay ahead of regulations, you're going to end up changing direction and pivoting, which is going to, again, cause more friction. And so, what we have is this proprietary framework, which is privacy principles by design. We take the underlying themes that run throughout each of these categories and we approach it from that perspective. It's the same reason that we approach it by aligning to frameworks and certifications because they change less rapidly, less often, and they align to those underlying principles.
Let's talk about the strategy and execution, Ms. Shane. What are the first concrete steps a tradition risk averse compliance team must take to start building a revenue oriented strategy? Where do they often get stuck?
I think it's just inventorying what you have. I think a lot of companies don't necessarily realize how much data they are collecting or holding. We'll ask a company, well, what do you have from in your data universe? And it won't occur to a lot of them. They have an email marketing list, they have a CRM, they have their employees' data in HR. There's all of these things. So just getting a full inventory of the information you have in your ecosystem, where it lives, who's managing it, just getting a handle on that and seeing what's there, who has access and is taking care of it and maintaining it. That's a huge first step that a lot of companies don't take. And the same goes for a vendor stack because most of a company's exposure is either going to be through the humans involved, just somebody making a mistake, or through their vendor stack. So through that CRM that they are subscribed to, or their project management software, or whatever else it could be. And so by looking at all of that, writing down what's there, and again, who has access to it, what's in there, do they have good data privacy practices, do they have their own certifications? So that's a huge part of it, and I think it can go a long way to that proactive approach, that proactive philosophy around compliance. Um, and it's so simple. It can just live in a spreadsheet if you want it to, if you don't want to take it further.
Miss Shane, you've suggested compliance can be a powerful sales and marketing tool. How does a company practically operationalize this, and how do you turn a security certification or privacy framework into a compelling line in a sales pitch?
It comes down to the fact that these certifications are basically a shorthand for how you conduct your business. And if you are approaching things with the care that it takes to earn, say, a SOC 2 Type 2 certification, it means you've jumped through a lot of hoops. You have gone through the whole audit, the 90-day process audit, and you've come out the other side demonstrating that you are operationally mature enough to manage that whole process. And so this is especially powerful, as I've mentioned, for B2B companies because you have a more sophisticated consumer. You have companies who are clients who will see that and know what it signifies. And so by putting that forward, by leading with that, especially for a company that does handle sensitive information, uh, a lot of tech or SaaS companies, anything that has kids data, health data, financial data, and you'd be surprised what could fall into, say, the category of health data. Uh, if you lead with that, then it is a powerful statement as far as what you have put together as a as a mature company, as a thoughtful company that will be a good steward of information, especially if you're going to be processing a client, working with their data, uh, or if you're just going to be interacting with them. It shows that you take it seriously. For B2C companies, it's going to come out more, like I said, with investors. And so marketing yourself as a safe investment, a safe bet to investors, that's going to be a really powerful marketing approach. I guess it's a, a different take on what marketing would be, but that is, that is necessary. That funding, it can be essential for some startups.
Machine in industries like fintech or health tech, can strong compliance directly justify a price premium? If so, how do you communicate the value to customers who may not understand the technical details?
So we literally have a calculator on our website, actually, where you can put in what industry your company's in, what your company's approach to risk is. Are you risk averse? Are you risk tolerant? And put in some information about your own revenue flows. It's the ROI calculator. And we don't see any of the inputs unless you want to submit your email. So you can play around with it and actually literally see what the payoff would be for the investment uh, in terms of freeing up executive times, freeing up engineer time, uh, speeding up deal closures, that sort of thing. So investing in compliance may seem like it could have a big price tag, especially when you're getting into certifications with audits and everything. That it feels like a heavy lift, especially for, say, a pre-seed startup or a pre-revenue company. But it ends up paying off. And honestly, when I was building this, I had to play with the math because I was absolutely shocked at some of the numbers because the payoffs were being measured in months, not years, and not a lot of months either. It's a relatively small investment compared to the number of hours it could choke up your core business operations. Uh, we've seen companies go an entire year working on earning their SOC 2, for example, and only get 3% of the way to audit readiness. Whereas if you bring in somebody who's a specialist in it and really focus on compliance in that way and invest in it literally, I mean, we got there in, a couple of months instead. So it's a huge difference in terms of where you want to allocate your resources and where the payoff is. If you want to do it yourself, I mean, it's possible. There are tools out there, but I think can take, like I was saying, that one company, it was taking, you know, 12 times as long, probably longer, since they were only 3% done. Other companies, it could take 4 times as long. And that's time that you could be selling, that you could be closing deals, that you could be focusing on product development. So it's one of those things that becomes a lot easier the more you do it. And most companies don't do it that often. Uh, but that's it's a business decision ultimately, to invest in it or not invest in it, to bring in someone outside.
But Shane, let's talk about the future vision, the AI compliance frontier. With the rise of AI and incoming AI specific regulations, where do you see the biggest opportunity to build compliance directly into AI products as a unique selling proposition?
I think there's been a lot of focus recently on the age restrictions. That's a big theme I've been seeing in news around AI governance and regulation and guidelines, because we don't know how it's going to affect developing brains, etc. So I think that if a company wants to get ahead of where some of the winds are shifting, building some of those guardrails into their products that will flag an underage user would be a wise choice. Uh, but just in general, ensuring that there is a human in the loop, because there's a lot of concern around how around AI making what would be classified as consequential decisions, the kind of decisions where there's an outcome that can cause harm potentially, like whether to give someone insurance, for example, or if it's being leveraged in health tech, for example, and there isn't a human expert checking. There's a lot of tension between the privacy of the user and their inputs and ensuring that the model is functioning properly. So getting ahead of where those concerns will be raised and building out a process to ensure the safety of the model, for lack of a better word, while keeping customer data, or user data, private to them, so it can be used in contexts like healthcare, like education, etc., is the other facet of it that I think will be a major theme that we will see.
As sustainability and supply chain due diligence regulations grow, how can companies move beyond reporting to actually create profitable, circular, or ethical products that the market rewards?
I think that with B2C companies, there's less scrutiny, for better or worse. So they are not held to the same standard. However, as B2B companies are. However, I do think that the trend towards transparently disclosing vendor stacks and vendor ecosystems as part of the data privacy sphere of things or pillar of things will start to become more commonplace. A lot of companies now are starting to publish their sub-processors, the companies that touch customer data in their own vendor stack. And having that available and having that transparency and the emphasis on transparency with data privacy and AI frameworks will start to trickle down, and expectations will increase in that sphere.
Looking decade ahead, do you envision future where the roles of chief compliance officer and chief growth officer converge? What would the organizations look like, Miss Shane?
I think they're I think they're very different skill sets, but I think there is a lot more room for integration of functions or communication between the functions. I think compliance is thought of as technical, it's kind of siloed in operations with legal rather than integrated into product or marketing or revenue streams. And I know I personally have seen a lot of value from being part of the product development process with clients and being able to weigh in on the flow and where there's opportunities for easy wins as far as building in transparency, fine tuning language, looking at opportunities to gain customer trust just by how the product is structured. And so I think that's where the potential wins are. In it's in the communication and involving each other in the processes. And I think from my perspective, hearing from the growth officer on where the smart risks are going to be, where they want to, tolerate a risk, as we say, as opposed to shutting it down. The compliance is not like the Department of No. It's it is one voice weighing in on business decisions.
What is the most counterintuitive or controversial idea about strategic compliance that you find yourself constantly having to defend?
I think the one I hear the most is, well, our vendors are all legitimate. Doesn't that protect us? I think it's a misconception that a lot of people have. You know, they work with Microsoft and Google and these other established companies, and that basically serves as compliance bubble wrap around their company. But it doesn't. You are still responsible for doing all of the same things as if you didn't have it, as if you were using unknown startups, because no company is immune from an incident. No company is full of perfect humans who are not going to make a mistake. It all comes down to doing the best we can, and you as a company want to have a defensible narrative that if somebody scrutinized your own practices, you want to be able to say, we have all of these policies and we follow them with these procedures. Our employees know what they're supposed to do, and we're doing our best. And it's never going to be perfect because perfect compliance is impossible. Even the big name, bold name companies, multinational corporations, they have what feels like all the resources in the world, and they can't do it perfectly. So how can you expect a startup or an SMB with limited resources to do it perfectly?
Ms. Shane, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in the third season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101, our fourth season, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season. I'm a baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Law 101, Bible Verses 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and Motivation 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Shane, tell us if you could leave every leader with one actionable mandate to start turning the compliance function into revenue center tomorrow, what would it be?
Don't ostrich, don't stick your head in the sand. It's not going to be perfect, like I said, but the best thing you can do is, take the next step, start the inventory, just start the process because something is better than nothing.
Yes, the process is hard, people, but once you deal with the process, voila, billions will come. For sure, Miss Shane, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Looking forward for our episode on Entrepreneurship 101. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. You can visit us at atos-data.com. Check out the ROI calculator, reach out to us, and we'd be happy to answer any specific questions that I didn't get to cover here.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Shayne Adler because if you support her for sure, more and more empowering ethos will rise. So, Miss Shayne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Monica, people, see you soon.